speaker is Andy Jones from Nikon Precision, who will also speak about the economics of machine translation, and he will also touch on the pricing models of post editing, but also from the aspect of the quality of machine translation. Andy, the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Will we have the poll first?
All right, so the answers are you currently using MT and PE all the time? 21%, sometimes 50%, and hardly ever 29%.
Okay, well, thank you very much for that. It's good to know. I hope my presentation helps get a perspective on this. So, how many are familiar with the machine translation mouth? This is the COVID isolation guy. It's a big mouth, but surprisingly not so expensive to feed. I'd like to discuss two. So first, I'd like to give a quick introduction of Nikon. Our division of Nikon, Nikon Precision, makes and services scanners, which are very large cameras used to print computer chips. The picture you see here, that's a scanner. It's about 11 feet tall, and the camera inside is also very big and very expensive. This means that our domain is very narrow. We're focused on semiconductors, but we have a fairly large term database, about 25,000 terms, as well as a translation memory, TM, of about 2 million segments. Also, a lot of the content types we translate have very high memory matches. We do mainly just one language pair, Japanese to English, mainly in just one language pair. We have highly experienced linguists, 10 years average experience with a lot of engineering courses under their belts, though none of us are MT experts. We even have unique work clothes, often called bunny suits, for use in the fab. First, internal gisting. Most of the content used in the engineering work is originally in Japanese. The official documents are professionally handled, but there is a huge volume of daily content and emails and so on that the engineers cannot read. Not all of the content is relevant to the reader, but they don't know what it says at all. So for years they went to Google and Bing, which are prohibited for security reasons. But the thing is, they just want to know what is in this email or document. What is it about? So we created what we call flash trans. That's the mascot in the upper part. It's an instant gist with a twist. They can drop in on the left side whatever source content they have, push the button, which is hard to see on the right, and they get the result. This gist has brought a great deal of satisfaction. In 2019, for example, it was used about 36,000 times. They translated 500,000 pages worth of material. We could have never have translated that much, but it would have cost, as you can see here, about $25 million. The number of requests for a post-edit, which they could do by just clicking a button, was only 56 times. That means that for
Andy,
point...
Got it.
This is the instant gisting we call flash trans. So when they come here, they can input on any material they want, including uploading a document for MT. And if they're happy, they just use it. If they're not, they can click another button to get a post edit. However, next slide. So it was used 36,000 times about in 2019. Of those times, only 56 people wanted a post edit. That's 0.002%. And basically, we found that they were happy with just the gist. And we did a survey to verify that. So, next slide. But the next area is professional production. This is where the linguists come in. We have constant demand for translation. I think everybody does, and they need to be done faster and for less money. We started probably 10 years ago with rule-based MT, and then moved to SMT. We found that it was a good experience, but it didn't change our business model very much. This changed completely when we switched to neural machine translation. It just changed our business model completely. Next slide. This chart shows some indication of the scope of the change. Once we had trained an MTM system with our select memory, our terms, and our style guide, everything changed. You can see here, for example, the sudden decline in outsourcing costs, the green line, while the volume of translations remained pretty constant. As you can imagine, management looked at this and was very happy, but that is not how many vendors felt. Next slide, please. There are many factors to this change. First is the highly trained and improved NMT with term and style guides. As you can see in the chart, this is reflected in the decreasing yellow or poor care scores or quality scores, and the increasing green excellent scores. This made post-editing much easier. In addition, we did have the 2 years from end of 2017 about to train post-editing, and as I mentioned, we have highly trained linguists. I think in the next presentation, you will hear more about that. In addition, we started a Kanban style production. Kanban means sign in Japanese and is a kind of lean production method. For us, it had two parts. One is we automated our workflow using metadata. That metadata is put in the Kanban or sign. The other part is whenever we find an error in the translation memory, we stop the translation, we analyze the error, and then we clean up the memory. So that helped with this too. Next slide, please. So, but what this big change made us feel like is a sandwich. On the one slice of bread is the vendors, the other is management, and in between is us, the translation group. Next slide, please. So, as you can tell from this chart, there's been a great drop in outsourcing to linguists. This chart reflects the first one, but from the point of view of payment, which John covered, and I think I would have changed this chart after hearing this presentation. As you can see, in 2016, we were using SMT, and we paid full price because the work was almost completely to redo the work. As the reduction in errors over time we started to change the payment methods. Right now, as you can see in 2020, the last one we did, we only had a 20% errors in the NMT. So we are trying to figure out now what is the best way to do it. In addition, we need to keep training the linguists on making the change from being a translator to being a post editor, and we feel that this is a big challenge. Next slide, please. So the management slice is a lot easier in many ways because the management sees the lower price from less vendors. But the fact is that our work has changed completely. In 2016, we had about equal human translation and human edit of the translation. That's changed completely so that now we don't do any translation per se. It's all of our documents are first MTed and then post-edited. What this means to us, though, is that the change in work requires change in organization and the kind of work we do. In particular, we have to now work on the neural machine translation engine. We have to train it, and we have to continue training ourselves in post-editing. In addition, there's a need to handle the data of all that we get for machine translation so that we can figure out how to pay people and how to be paid, because the machine translation data has never been in our invoicing. So it's a huge change. Click, please. That's the machine translation mouse turning on its head. Next slide. So, in our conclusion for this at this time is that the investment in the Instant Gist tool is quick and regret-free. The main part is that everybody who uses it must be aware that the MT has mistakes, and some of them are big, and they sign an agreement to that effect. Second, we have to make investments in training in PE, post-editing, updating on NMT developments, which are happening, as I think everybody knows, incredibly quickly. And then third, doing whatever it takes to get the proper tools. There's a lot of hype regarding this, about what's the best tool to use. Then, the hardest one for me as a manager is investment in the time to learn how to explain to management the new work and the real benefits of the NMT investment, primarily because everybody reads the hype, human parity hype, and it causes a lot of very high expectations that are difficult to manage. So in conclusion, click please. Feeding the empty mouth is not easy, but it is definitely well worth it. Next slide, please. Yay. Next click, please. Yay. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy.
Thank you, Andy. Thank you very much. It seems we haven't received any new questions. So if there are, yeah, I just want to ask or double check something. because obviously we MCs and also the Gala staff is looking at different things as well, not just the presentation. But you say, Andy, that you completely managed to cut human translation. So what is the, and I know it's coming up in the next presentation, but how did you manage to achieve that kind of quality from the MT? And I'm also taking into account fitness for purpose considerations, but I'm interested in when I see figures like that, I become intrigued. So can you say a few words about that?
Yeah. So when we first started using NMT, it was not that great. What we found though is when we trained it on our memory about 1.2 million segments at first, and some of our terms, about I think 10,000 terms, and our style guide. So the way that the Nikon writers write in Japanese has some like symbols that have to be translated, and some weird things like that. Those started to be used in the engine after training, and then we found our vendors and our linguists in-house were not changing the NMT result. They looked at it, and that's part of this. You have to pay people to look at things and analyze them, but they didn't need to be changed. And that coupled with a high memory match, it just made sense to not have a guy sit there and look at the Japanese and then figure out what its source was, the target, because it was there. And as the next speaker, Mitch, in particular, set out a post-edit training, and so people could quickly learn how to move around the words to make it natural, accurate, and fluent.
Thank you very much. In the meantime, we received 3 questions, so I can read out some for you. Pablo is asking, you have a single language pair and a single highly technical domain. Don't you think the high success rate has a lot to do with that?
Yes, that's why, yeah, definitely. I can see the challenge of multiple languages. We can really concentrate on this one language pair, and it helps tremendously. And as with all linguists in our vendors too, have 10 years of experience at least, so they really know the material and can spot errors and make corrections easily.
Thank you very much. It seems that one of the questions that we received is connected to another question that was asked during the previous presentation and that was not answered. Yeah, I'm going to ask this question in itself because it does make sense. So let's try that. I heard from my network, this is Elizabeth asking, I heard from my network that MT isn't commonly used in Greek translations. So how would you handle MT in this type of scenario? It may not be your field of expertise, but the question is here nevertheless. So let's.
I'm sorry. The question is, MT is not.
It's not commonly used in the Greek translation. So it's like either the source language or the target language is Greek. We are looking at that scenario. So how would you handle MT in that situation?
But I can't imagine why it wouldn't be, because it's been used in so many other languages. But I mean, Japanese is one of the hardest to translate. So if it works for Japanese, I don't know why it wouldn't work. I mean, for example, in Japanese there's no spaces between words, so there's a lot of extra data analysis that's required. But it still works.
Question doesn't say that it doesn't work. It says it isn't commonly used, and that I hear a difference there. But yeah, it's probably if I have to think of it, it's probably has to do with the quantity and quality of the source materials that you use to train the MT.
Yes, that's one part of our work that's constantly a challenge. Is, if the source document is not formatted properly, or has weird language, obviously, but it's really causes problems. But that's always been the case, even before. It just stops automation dead in its tracks.
Right. Yep. Two more questions that I'd like to read out. One is how does MT perform for creative texts? This is the question.
Well, yeah, that's up until probably 6 months ago, we did not use MT for kind of creative text like marketing material. Mm-hmm. But we use several engines, and one of our engines just works pretty well with those texts, and especially just to get all the terms in the target segment when you're translating is a help. But anyway, we're finding that it really helps, even with creative, at least marketing, not novels. I don't know about those kind of things, but marketing materials and presentations that are made to in meetings.
Yeah, I guess the asker thought of this category. Last question, it seems. Cora is asking, were you able to seriously change the source text to be consistent?
Yeah, I think that was one of the slides that started to getting mixed up. So, no, we're having a lot of trouble with that. But it's part of the kind of upper management, talking to management and trying to get people in the other side of the world to start using HTML and XML, other formats that are a lot easier in terms of this workflow. But yeah, no, it's been a long, I should say, in some people, some divisions are pretty good. They saw the value of standardizing, and we showed them the cost. I mean, it costs 1.5 or 6 times more to translate an improperly formatted or non-standardized text. So,
yeah. Thank you very much.
Sure.
This wraps up Andy's presentation. Thank you, Andy, very much.
Thank you.
And